What's up, guys? Tim Halstead with DragBoss Garage. And yeah, you guys been waiting, and we're glad you're waiting. And we already have a bunch of people here. I can't see how many, but there's at least probably 10 people already. And I want to introduce Frank from Dandy Engines, Frank Marchese. You know, it's kind of a Italian name in New York. It'd be Marchese, huh?
Marchese.
Yeah.
Yeah, I reckon I'd be in New York if I was living in the US.
I grew up in New York, so yeah.
I heard the pizzas are good there.
Yeah, they are. But I wanted to thank you first off, Frank, for coming aboard with a live chat with DragBoss Garage. One of my mates there, I would say, Jason Murphy. I don't know if you know him, but he's a big Cleveland fan and a smart engine builder. And he sent me an email the other day, a message yesterday, talking about how to do a YouTube channel, it takes a lot of time, a lot of sacrifice from your family. Just like you coming here to be with us is sacrificing your time with your family. And I appreciate that. The viewers on here, the subscribers, it's the same thing. We're taking time away from our family or something we want to do to spend time with me and you. And I appreciate people taking that courtesy and time out of their schedule. So thank you.
No, it's my pleasure. It's great to join a bunch of people that love the same thing. And yeah, we're talking about the things that we love here. And, you know, that's what
I love it because we're, I don't know how far away we are, but we still think the same. You know, our thoughts are pretty much the same in how to make horsepower. I think yours are a little more advanced than most people, but.
No, I just live and breathe it every day of the week, you know, but. You know, when you think about it, there's only a bit of water between the two countries, America and Australia, and that's the only thing stopping us from being united, you know. But, you know, we pretty much try to live our lives like the American people because it's such a great way of life.
It is. Freedom. I mean, you got to have freedom. There's no doubt. But I think there's some limits to what people think is freedom. We won't get into that, but, you know, it's just opinion. But, you know, I've been watching since we talked last with your XW. I kind of was looking through it and doing some research on it. And I started looking underneath. I mean, that thing's a monoleaf in the back with a slider suspension, you know, going 211 miles an hour. That just blows me away.
It's, you know, it was always a dream of mine. I love race cars. I love chassis cars. I was involved in pro stock for like 5 years in Australian pro stock. Now, our Australian pro stocks are small blocks. They're not a big block engine combination. But I love the whole race car pro mod. But true to my heart, I grew up in a street car and trying to make a street car fast.
Exactly.
And that's where the idea of the XW just evolved into something that never in my wildest dreams did I think we could go 212 miles an hour. And let's keep in mind, the whole monocoque of the car is a factory 1969 model car. It's not like, yes, we have bar work integrated into the car for safety.
Yeah.
But it's not like the car started out on someone's table in a workshop and got turned into what we call a race car today with the engine in the right, you know, crankshaft line at the right height.
Yep.
You know, the rear end. Everything on that car is based off factory suspension points.
Are they unibody cars?
What do you call a unibody car? Like,
it's got a subframe, but the floor pans are part of the frame of the car that tie together.
Okay, so it's not like a Camaro.
Like a Mustang or a Cougar 69.
Mustang more like a Mustang, yeah.
Yeah, so they have a unibody, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
So it's like the front chassis rails. They're integrated to the car.
Yep.
Then you have two separate ones coming through for the transmission mount.
Okay.
So,
I can see it underneath. You had a lot of bars going around the front to back. You know, I don't know if it's chromoly tubing, something like that. It looked like.
What we decided is, look, it all started back in 2009 when you know, I first met the guys from Proline Racing.
Yep.
And we brought over Steve Petty, as I've mentioned in the past. He tuned a Mustang, but it was a big tire Mustang, very similar to what they use for the no prep racing that they're doing over there, Street Outlaws no prep.
Yeah, 33 inch, 32.
Yeah, but it had a small block Ford, a traditional small block Ford with like an SC1 style head.
Yeah.
And a couple of old Garrett 88 turbos. And, within 3 to 4 runs, we annihilated the record out here in Australia with Steve tuning the car, running 7.0s at like 204 miles an hour. And all that could go through my head was, what if we put this in a street car? It was 9-to-1 compression.
Oh, yeah.
You could drive it on pump fuel from track to track, but you get to the track, you turn it up, and we're going to have 2,000 horsepower. And that's how it all started. I thought, well, if they can do that, we can do it. I just don't know how it's going to work with a leaf spring and a 275 tyre. So,
well, you got to have some type of, I wouldn't call it traction control, but you got to have some kind of electronic,
I learned, yes, definitely.
For managing the power, you know what I mean?
Well, in the end, I learned making power became easier. But the hardest part, and this is where, I was fortunate enough to hang out with Steve Petty and some of the tuners from Proline, and they taught me how to power management. So it's not all about, trying to control the engine with boost only. We controlled it with, trying to keep the engine pinned down to a certain RPM, using the electronics that we have with ECUs today. And,
sure.
That made a huge difference. Timing control the engine all the way down the track.
Now add fuel injection, and so you can master the curve and do whatever you want to do to put the fuel in where you want. It's amazing,
Yeah, and it makes a small block look amazing in power because of how much you can control it.
How many? What block are you using? Because I saw a picture where you had split a block initially in 2016.
I don't know if this is a good road to go down. It might not do me no favors, but it started off. I had a block. I don't know if I should mention the companies.
No, you don't have to.
But it was an aftermarket block.
Sure, yeah.
And I cracked 3 of these blocks from the main tunnel down to the camshaft.
I saw a picture, yeah.
And we were only making around 2,000 at the time, and I was still trying to figure the car out. And we used to use an MSD ignition cut to try and get the car through first gear. And when it used to hit the ignition cut to try and soften the engine up, it used to pop and bang. And people used to say that's why I was breaking the blocks. The ignition cut was too aggressive, chopping cylinders up.
Yep.
Anyway, I went through 3 of those blocks, and then I purchased an aluminium block from Bill Mitchell Jr. And look, I think I did 5 or 10 runs, and it pushed the whole crankshaft bulkhead off the block. So the main bearing caps and the bulkhead was still attached to the crankshaft and spinning.
Yeah.
But it literally pushed the crankshaft off the block, and it destroyed everything. I had nothing to recover, and it split the block in 2 halves. When I stripped the engine, I had 2 4-cylinders.
Wow.
Bit disheartening at the time because it's very expensive out here to build one of these engines when you're using Bryant crankshafts and 937 style lifters.
Yeah. $2,000. Yeah.
Full steel camshaft. Like, the engine wasn't exotic, but I tried to put in the best quality parts to handle the power.
Okay.
I was pretty upset at the time, and I got on the internet and I started, getting frustrated because I wasn't getting any help from the company. And a gentleman by the name of Dick Boyer contacted me on Messenger and said, hey, I'm, taking care of the cast iron division of World Product Blocks. And he said, would you like to try one of our blocks if I send one? I'm thinking, look, I just had a bad run from your partner, aluminium version.
Yep.
And they pretty much sealed the deal when they said to me, if something goes wrong, we'll cover it. And I ran their block, and it was a game changer. It was one of the best experiences I had. I was able to just use the traction control the same way, and it didn't hurt nothing. And it just led me to keep feeding power into the car until we ran. We were in the race to try and beat a couple of guys in Australia that had we call GTR Nissans, the V-spec Nissan cars, the four-wheel drive late model. They were running low sevens, and then I dipped into the low sevens. And then the race was on for the first 6. Unfortunately, the four-wheel drive guys with the 6 cylinders, they just snuck in there before me. But, you know, on the same day, I ran 7 000 at 205.
Wow.
You know, and, you know, you go home from that, and you obviously process the information from the data logger. Next time we came out, we went 690s at 212. The reason for the big jump in mile an hour is because I figured out on the hub dyno how to put more boost in it and not burn the engine up or pistons. I was using Q16, so you know, we had seen 50 pound of boost. I'd never seen 50 pound at the track, so that's why I went from 205 to 212 miles an hour was the extra boost. Okay. But the track wasn't there, so my short numbers were slow. That's why the ET didn't show as fast as it should have. Right. But
you had better mile an hour.
Yeah.
Yeah. How much boost?
Well, the most boost I've seen when I ran the it was a 211.9. I had 57 pounds of boost, but I was still playing around with the traction control, and it was pulling 9 degrees of timing from my. So let's just say at 50 pound of boost, I was shooting for like, I think it was like 14 degrees of timing, which is a bit low, a bit safe. And it only ended up having 5.5. So it goes to show you how good a small block Ford can be, even with a total of 5 degrees, 6 degrees of timing. Even though it had 57 pound of boost, you know, the car came in at 3850 pounds with me in it, and it still went nearly 212 miles an hour.
A flying brick, man. That's what that thing is. Square, you know. It's aerodynamic.
I'll never forget, you know, talking to Steve Petty, and he's asking me, he goes, Frankie, why are you short shifting? And I'm like, 8800 is not short shifting to me. How hard do you want me to turn it? He goes, well, it shows it's still making power at 9, like, you know, at 8800. Yeah. He goes, if the parts are good enough, he goes, don't be scared to turn it to 9200. 94. Well, it went to 90. It went to 93, 9400, and man, that thing is roaring at that RPM. It's a sound that I wish I could capture in a jar and let people listen to it. Put your phone in there and strap it in and record that sound. I've brought some good cameras now, so next time we come out, we're going to share it with the viewers for sure. I've been watching your videos, and I mean, to watch you drive that thing gets out of hand, man, and you drive that thing like the boss. I thought I was a drag boss. Hell. I mean, you wheel man for sure. You know, it's I grew up with those cars doing silly things as a teenager, and it's obviously come in handy in my older age. So yeah, we've been lucky. There's a few people I'll recognize on here. One is a friend of mine, old engine. He says, "Get a Hemi, mate." And I said, "Look behind you, Ronnie. Behind him is a couple Hemis right back there that are making serious power." Yeah, which way do I go? There you are. Front drive blowers, superchargers. I mean, those things are bad. So a lot of people have signed on here. There's about 70 people here already, and we just started talking. Nice. Well, that's because you got a good following, Tim. You're interesting to watch. Oh, thank you. I don't know about interesting to watch, but it flatters me when you say that. I'm actually honored, Frank, to be able to talk to you. Me, some dude out in his garage shed working on the same race car he's had for 40 years and just building old Clevelands.
and talking about it, and people like to hear about it, I guess. The pro stock I want to bring back, the stuff I want to recreate, this is stuff that's going away. And if we don't keep it now and bring it back, it'll be gone forever,
Yeah. Well, you just sharing those videos of Bob Glidden, it's amazing because there were photos there that I had never seen. There was information there that I had never seen. And even though it might have been 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it doesn't matter because it goes to show you how hard one person worked to chase a dream or a goal that he had. And it's inspiring to see and watch that. It reminds me a little bit about how my life went through the Cleveland, growing up with the Cleveland.
Okay.
My very first pass was a 14-second pass with a Cleveland. And
Me too.
Coming back and scratching my head and going, look, I know these things can go faster,
Advance the cam, that's what I had to do.
The first dumbest thing I ever did was I went and bought a massive camshaft.
Oh yeah.
And I was in my mum's garage, my mum and dad's garage at home, and a few people said to me, "Don't do it. It's going to go backwards." I'm going, "But it can't. It's going to give me more power." And it went backwards. I forgot I didn't know about compression and the rest of it.
Oh sure. It's all a piece of puzzle and a combination. You put that combination together, you're gone, man.
No doubt. It's been small steps, Tim. It's been like I'm 47 and I've been at it since I was 18. And each day or each time something goes wrong, I try and take the positive out of it and learning from it.
Got to learn from your mistakes so you don't do them again,
No. And the Cleveland engine, like as we know it, it's been a fun journey watching it develop. So,
well, I think what's going to be a game changer, at least from my point of view, in my little part of the world, is the new DragBoss block that we got. Now I have an aluminum one that's getting done right. It's actually done already, ready to go to Tony Bischoff at BS with Darren Morgan, and they're going to build it for me. So he finally has an iron block poured now. Now that block, that can go if it all goes well, that thing could go like 4,200, I think, 4,190. Yeah. But, the following now is a majority is Windsor. You're a Windsor. I mean, that's the block that was carried on on this side of the state from 74 on. The Windsor went on. The Cleveland was only 4 years, so you guys took it over. But the Windsor is so developed now. That's all you guys use for big horsepower, right? A dart block
Yeah. The Mano wall block. It's just an easier platform to make power.
Sure. But I think
the arrow blocks were good. I just never got my hands on one at the right time. And maybe if I had, maybe my car would have been an arrow block. And that could have been a different, who knows which way it could have gone.
Do you, here's a question for you. Two things. On a dart block, their oil passage, there's an area where you can put a 70 thousandths restriction in the oil galley. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you put that in every engine that you build? Do you restrict that?
No.
Okay. When do you restrict that?
Look, as oil pumps have advanced, I don't put any more restrictors in the engines.
Okay.
Unless I was struggling with way too much oil in the valve cover, in the tappet covers. So to me, you can't have too much oil to help lubricate push rods and springs. If you burn a push rod up by trying to restrict oil to the lifters,
right,
you're not doing the lifters any good by restricting oil to them. And this is just my opinion.
Sure.
And I've seen too many people lose races from burning up a push rod tip from not having enough oil at the push rod. Now, if you can drain the oil back to the oil pan, let's get back to if you don't have any oil left in your oil pan, well, you're going to be in bigger trouble than anyone. But
return.
as long as you can keep enough oil in the oil pan for the whole run,
Yep.
And if need be, I'm not scared to put drain backs in the cylinder head, back to the sump, or
Okay.
back to the oil pan.
Sure.
To me, you can never have too much oil at the lifter and the push rod. So why restrict it unless you've got a problem at the main bearings? Which usually a problem at the main bearings will be, something that hasn't been machined correctly.
Okay. All right. I learned a long time ago with a Cleveland, way back, put a big sump on it. And I've always ran a 9-quart sump and I never had no oil problems, and oil restrictors in the mains. And that's it. And I never had any issues. $8,000, no issues. Then I switched to cam restrictor bearings along with the restrictors in the mains and still had good luck with it. So, but I've never bushed anything, but I want to do some of these old blocks I have and bush them, put lifter bore bushings in them.
Well, and the purpose of doing that is because that factory lifter gallery is so large that you're losing not pressure, but you're going to lose volume.
Indeed.
And if you think about it, you open up the main bearing clearance, you might open up the big end bearing clearance. That oil pump is no longer going to supply volume.
Easy now. My kids had to come in and meet Frank.
Sweetheart?
Frank the Crank,
Hi.
king of the swing.
Which one just turned 10? The one in the blue jacket?
Yes. Say hi, Iz.
Hi.
Hey there. Hope you had a great birthday.
Thank you.
Hello, sweetheart.
This is Elena. She's 6.
Wow.
So they think Dad's crazy for being on, talking away and making all these videos.
Dad's famous. Dad he comes all the way to Australia on my TV screen.
Yep, he watches me every episode. Huh. And there's my beautiful wife, but she won't come in here.
She's come on.
Come on.
Mom, come on.
Come on.
Come on.
Hi.
How are you?
Good. How about yourself?
Good.
Good.
I told him that we're going to talk for just about a couple hours or so, whatever. But she goes, you got to put a limit on it. You can't be talking 3 and 4 hours.
He's a talker.
When we're talking about cars, we can talk all day.
I'm sure.
Cars and engines, that's it. You could.
Yeah.
All right, give me a kiss. And I'll see you later. All right.
Bye.
Good night.
See you, girls.
Bye.
Bye.
Nice meeting you.
Bye.
Bye.
Yeah, that's cute. Nothing like family.
Can't beat it. You only get one. You only get one family.
Daddy, I don't have to wear my hood outside when it's raining. It's not that rainy.
Okay.
Bye.
All right, bye. She doesn't have to wear a hood outside. It's not raining that bad. I said, okay. But
But
they'd love to see you.
yeah, getting back to those lifter, lifter bores.
Yeah,
sleeves,
yeah.
It's good to be able to, keep. At the moment, it's like a half. I think they're like a half-inch hole going through the oil gallery. That's constantly exposed. And when you got 16 exposed, yeah.
Now
they might be bigger than half-inch from memory. I can't remember exactly, but
I think it's 0.585
yeah,
from doing one of my videos on the oil cali.
yeah.
I'll tell you a funny story. I talked to a guy the other night on my way home from work. His name is Denny Weyendorf. Denny Weyendorf is a old super stock racer. He's 70. He might be tuning in now, but he still has the same car. He raced a 70 Mustang, and he raced Cleveland since the 70s. He used to hang out. He used to go down to Jack Roush's shop and hung out with Jack. And Jack, if you're watching this, because I'm trying to get you next on a video, Scott Shafroff told me I might be able to hook up with you and Chris Slidenberg. So hopefully that works. But he used to go down and buy stuff off Roush back in the 70s. He said Jack always had the stuff was twice as high as everybody else, but he had good customer service. And he said that Dick Maskin used to work out of the back of Jack Roush's. Maskin and Canners, those guys, they had a shop back there. And he showed him the cylinder head that he used to cut up, transect it to build the Pro Stock heads when they were building them back then. Now he has his own lifter bore set he sells for like I don't know how much it is, $389 or $400 with its own reamer, and it comes with its own bushings. You could do it yourself. Tons of people have used it, but it's kind of funny to see the history, about people working out of Jack Roush's, Maskin and Canners. Booth was down there, Dick Aarons, all those guys. It's great history.
Oh yeah, man. Like those guys there, there's so much to learn from them. I've watched so many documentaries on Jack Roush and
Oh yeah,
the Yates family. Holy smokes, they've got some cool stories,
and we just lost Dick Maskin just last week. The week before he died.
Yep, very sad. Yep, he was definitely an innovator.
He was. I mean, he made the first sheet metal tunnel ram. That's what Darren Morgan told me.
Wow.
Yeah, I can tell you from my research, I'm doing a video now from Bob Glidden from the 1980 year. See, that's the year he went with a sheet metal tunnel ram, because I found pictures of it that I zoom in and I know what it looks like. You can see it. And his son told me that too, Rusty. He's been on here. So yeah. Now those pictures you talked about, remember you saw those pictures? Do you know who the guy is that's in there?
No.
The guy that you see in there that I said, oh, that's Bob's buddy or that's working with him or whatever. If you remember that.
Yeah.
That's actually Fred Flagel. Fred Flagel started Indy Cylinder Head.
Okay. Yeah.
That's who that is in that picture. Yeah.
Wow.
So I'll try to get him on. I'd like to talk to him, get him on a live chat.
Yeah.
Because this is the stuff we want to bring back. I mean, you're a professional. You're taking time out of your day to talk about how your engine works and what you've done to it. The professional opinion on things. And I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And
you want to share it with everyone because it's not really that hard for everyone to do, but it's just like anything, it's a big thing to take on.
And if you
go, so I was just going to say, it seems easy because I'm in a machine shop every day, but it's not really. I wish I could do an episode on how really easy the engine is.
And after you do it for so long, you know what I mean? You just know without even thinking. It's just like heart surgery. I did heart surgery for 13 years, open heart surgery. So it's like during a heart surgery, you don't even really have to talk a lot. You just you put your hand out, they put the right tool in that you need to do. It's like a well-oiled machine, and you don't even have to talk. You can listen to the radio or whatever. You're the same way. When you get to that, you're master at your craft. Yeah. So, and what we talk about may save somebody up here, a few $100. Oh, I listened to them. Maybe I didn't need to do that. I should have done that.
Yeah.
So you don't always put those restrictors in for that dart block.
No.
Okay.
No, like I said, look, I just make sure that we've got a good volume pump.
Okay.
Because, you're obviously you're opening up clearances. I don't want to restrict oil to my lifters and push rods.
Yep.
So I just try to compensate it with a volume of oil pump.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like a high volume oil pump?
High volume, yeah. And then one of the biggest things that I see that people don't do is they're not as concerned about, like they'll go to the trouble to put restrictors everywhere.
Yeah.
But then they'll only run a 5-quart sump or something like that.
Right.
And you think about it. As soon as you fire the engine up or you do your burnout, you must have at least. I mean, I can't talk quarts a lot because I don't speak quarts.
Yeah. How many liters?
Okay, so I like to put generally 10 liters in an oil pan. And people look at me as if I'm crazy because most high performance oil pans that we see, that they'll be marked, 7 liters. But you think about it, 7 liters, I think that's quite close to, I'm not sure, I'll have to convert that to quarts, but
I want to say about 7 quarts maybe.
It's not far off, yeah. But it's like by the time you start the engine up, it traps oil in the cylinder head, it traps oil in the valve. There's going to be oil trapped everywhere. Every gallery is full of oil. I can guarantee you only have maybe 4 liters in the oil pan.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're expecting to do a quarter-mile pass. It's crazy. But everyone thinks by putting 10 liters in an oil pan, oh, it's going to hit my crankshaft. It's going to cause other dramas. Let me tell
Windage.
you, I've seen more engines burn up from not having enough oil than having too much oil. I've never seen an engine damaged because it's got too much oil.
Right. Okay.
And that's the first thing I did to my engine was I extended the oil pan. I brought a Moroso oil pan and an aluminium one, and I extended the front of it about 5 inches forward, and it gave me an extra 4 liters of oil. So I could comfortably put 13 liters of oil in the engine, and I have never, ever had a drama with bearings. Now, mind you, I do run an external oil pump.
Sure.
Because I wanted to run high oil pressure and have the volume to cater for, or, you know, I'm feeding 2 turbos. So we're going to break the oil circuit, even though there's going to be some sort of resistance at the other end. But I run like 4,000 bearing clearance on my mains and big.
Really? 4,000, really? Yeah.
Some people might say it's too much, but you know, those Hemis out the back there run 6.5 to 7, you know, so I've never had a drama with bearings.
Wow.
It's not a NASCAR engine, and I don't run NASCAR style oil, so I've got everything super safe. And it works. If it didn't work, maybe I would change it. But at the moment, you know, if it's not broken, don't fix it. So.
And that's exactly what I say about Cleveland's, although you don't really mess with them now pretty much for the most part. In my stuff, to make them live, same thing. I went through every oil passage with a grinder and ground them all, so I had good return at the heads that never line up. I went through everywhere. You have to go take the time and all the oil, where the oil filter goes on, grind all that out, smooth it all out. I mean, that's important stuff that you can do yourself, that people can, and makes a difference.
That's right. That's right.
Do you build Cleveland still at Dandy?
Oh, I love them. Yeah, they're my favorite. Right. I've got a soft spot for them.
Nice. That's cool.
Like the ultimate Cleveland. I mean, ever since I started watching your shows, I must say, one of my next little dreams to do is a very similar style engine to what Bob Glidden had in the early days, with the race port exhaust on the aluminium blocker cut into an exhaust. I want to run a tunnel ram that he had.
That's my dream too. That's why I'm doing it. Yeah. I dreamed it, and I'm doing it. So I got an extra set of heads, and I'll ship them to you, and you can build one. You know what I mean?
I think we might have to do something, because I'd love to go back with the knowledge I've got today and almost relive my youth again, that I couldn't do it when I was young, couldn't afford to do, and didn't have the know-how. I'd love to do it now.
I'm telling you, they are. The work that went into them is amazing. I don't know, like, here's a picture of some ports. Can you see those ports?
Yep.
Those are the ports that Bob Glidden did for a 79 car. That's the port work for the 79 for the 3, whatever it was, the W2 heads that he had. Look at the port work on those things, man.
He was definitely an innovator, and nothing stopped him.
Here's the Maskin's head. It's kind of hard to see, but you could see they transected it, cut it in half right there to raise the ports up, you know?
Yeah.
Now there's what you're talking about. Those tunnel rams, they're kind of hard to see in that picture. But that would be fun. If I shipped you a set of heads and had you start building a Cleveland, you know, a pro stock motor, that'd be fun.
That would be real fun, yeah.
And I think we could do it too. You know, just a matter of post. That's it. It's the post. To get stuff there. I'm going to look at some of these questions that people talked about. One of them asked me what oil you use in your engine.
Oil, I use, there's 2 different brands I've used. Depends on where I'm going or who's helping me on the time. So we use a locally made oil that's called Tritech.
Okay.
And that was 2050, 20W50. And the other one is VP Racing Fuels.
Okay.
I use their straight 50.
Got it. Let's see here. Other people are talking about Russ started Indy Cylinder Head, not Fred. Fred is Russ's younger brother. Okay. So that Fred Flagel didn't start Indy Cylinder Head, his brother did, but he still works.
You're very close. I mean, brother
Yeah.
It's not that far off.
Thanks, Greg. Good evening, Tim. Thanks for the live stream. Appreciate it. So he donated $2. That's a good thing. Thank you. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
If we get any money on here, Frank, I always split it with whoever I'm talking to, because to compensate you for your time, because I appreciate it coming here and talking with everybody. We got almost 100 people on right now. So
That's cool.
when Darren Morgan was on, people were kind of asking him, well, I got this motor and I'm going to do this cam change. What do you think it's going to make? And, those are really hard questions to answer without the data and to try to guess, so big block. I'm not sure what they're asking about. No, I'll tell you. So his engine's a 450 cubic inch Windsor Blaze small block running twin precision 88s. Last I knew. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, people are interested in that car. I mean, that thing is.
I've only got Gen 1 precision turbos, and that's all I've ever had because that's what I had from day one.
Okay.
And I feel like I haven't gotten to the end of them yet. Like I said, when we ran to 11.9 miles an hour,
yep,
it was 57 pounds, but I'm sure there was room to put more CO2 on the gate to make more boost. And I've still got more timing to put into the engine. So once the chassis is sorted out, I strongly believe the car will go 215 with a small block.
So to raise the boost, instead of having a spring there on the wastegate, you're having CO2 pressure to keep the wastegate closed instead of a spring?
So I use it like a 3-pound spring.
Yep.
So I can then, that's just to control down low. So if I wanted to do just a burnout,
yep,
I don't have any CO2 on the burnout.
I understand.
So 3 pounds is enough to do a burnout and warm the tires up. It's actually enough to go to the 330. So that's as far as I've gone. I can feel it runs out of legs with 3 pounds of boost.
Okay.
But then when I turn my boost controller on, my boost controller switch, it then turns the CO2 on and gets ready to activate from once I leave the trans brake button. So once it draws a curve, I've drawn a curve and I feed the boost in. And it obviously has a set desired amount of CO2 just whilst you're on the trans brake button.
Okay.
So I leave with about 6 pounds of boost. And if you watch some of my videos, I've gotten into the habit of, if I'm not racing someone and I have to be sharp on the tree, like for instance, when I was doing drag week, not to waste any runs.
Yep.
I was actually looking down at my screen, making sure that the boost had plateaued out to 6 PSI before I let go of the button.
Okay.
So I wouldn't waste any runs. And the fastest the car has gone is a 116 in the 60 foot. But because of my first gear ratio and the crankshaft center line is not ideal, the front end is an old school, we have, I think we have 20 inches of travel, but we try to give it only 5 or 6 inches of travel.
Okay.
The car does try to wheelie very easily. So it's a fine line between getting that 116, 119, 60 foot under control by putting 40 pounds or 30 pounds of weight on the nose.
Okay. Here's a question for you. It says, Frank, have you played around with the new electronic wastegates from TurboSmart yet?
Yes, I have.
There you go.
We had a small block Windsor on the dyno that we actually got the first set and we played with, and they are amazing. The Fuel Tech controls them so fast. I've still got a little bit of learning to do with them, but on an engine dyno, it was very hard to control with wastegate pressure on CO2 because the dynos can only hold so many foot-pounds of torque. The water brake is like a converter.
Okay.
So as soon as I would open the throttle, if the engine overshot the boost, let's say a good small block Ford with a single turbo,
yep,
it will try and make 1,200 horsepower as soon as you open 1,200 foot-pounds. As soon as you open the throttle at 4,500 RPM, it will blow through the water absorber that I have.
Okay.
So then we got these electronic wastegates, and we were able to open them like sharp open.
Yep.
And it would tell you that it was open 100% of wastegate. And then to make 5 pound, it was only 95%, you know, and you didn't have that information before. So we now know how far the valve is open to make X amount of boost.
Yeah.
But as soon as we ramped it in, we could ramp it in like an aspirated engine. So as soon as I released the engine, we had a ramp that was straight up, and we could see what the engine would make, and the dyno would obviously hold the engine as if it was an aspirated engine. So yes, I'm putting the Turbo Smart wastegates on my car. So hopefully in the next month or two, when we bring the car out, yeah, we'll get a quick handle on those and get away from CO2 for the first time.
And you're using Fuel Tech, am I right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. And that's like all sequential port injection type stuff?
Well, I had the older Fuel Tech because I was lucky enough to come to America in 2014.
Okay.
And I was invited by Proline to come and meet the guys from Fuel Tech for the first time when they flew from Brazil to the US.
Oh, nice.
And we spent nearly 3 weeks in Georgia putting a Fuel Tech FT 500 on 2 of Proline's fastest. One was a small block and one was a big block.
Okay.
Gasoline cars they were, Q16. And we got to develop it over 3 weeks, and I didn't have anything to do with it. I was just there watching and learning.
Yep.
And I got to bring one back and put one on my car back in late 2014. And I've been with them ever since.
Nice. Andy from Motorsports Garage, thank you for that super chat sticker, $20. Thank you, Andy. He has his own YouTube channel. You might have seen that, Unity Motorsports Garage. Does a lot of tunnel ram stuff. He's building it's a Boss 429 based on a small block Windsor with Greg Brown's Hammerhead Hemi heads.
Yeah, I've met Greg. Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yep. Great product, too.
Yep. I love his work.
It says here, Frankie, have you ever been to the Engine Masters Challenge, and who did you go with?
Yes. That's yes, I went back in 2006. I was lucky to be a part of it with a friend of mine, Dave Stalline. And I got to meet Tony Bischoff and hang out with the guys that worked with Tony. And I got to meet John Carsey. So I pretty much got to meet my heroes, all in 1 week and be involved in the Engine Masters.
Nice. I'll tell you a little quick history of that engine right back here, how I kind of started this YouTube. If you look back and watch my channels, the guy that helped me build that was his last engine he ever built, and he died. And he was buddies with Kazi since age 16. They used to race together. Where I live now, Kazi's from up the road about maybe 20 minutes, Avon, Ohio. And John was actually going to help me with that DragBoss, but he told me when I talked to him last, he's 68 years old. He said, I'm 68 years old, Tim. I'm building a new building. I got this business. There's no way I can keep up with it. I'll never get that engine done, And just like Darren Morgan at BS, those guys work like crazy. Do you work the same way? Are your hours like that too?
Oh, it's Sunday. I'm here.
Yeah.
I don't stop.
I was hoping it was just to talk to me, not work on engines.
I was working before I talked to you, but we got some, got a few hours in. But
okay.
Yeah. No, look, there's only one. The days, I try to fill my days up because one day, Tim, that clock's going to run out and I won't get to do what I want to do. So if I want to do it, I've got to do it now. And that's how I look at it. Some people think I'm a workaholic. Some people might think I'm crazy. I have my family to balance my life out.
Sure.
On that side. And then I have, my work ethics is pretty strong.
You have to, man. You got to be a worker. And like you, I only have probably 14 good years, and people laugh about that on here, but that's about all I have. I'll be 70, and I don't want to be doing this stuff when I'm 70. I want to get all my dreams, all my engines I want to build, my Pro Stock Clevelands, my Cougar. I want to finish all that stuff and be done. And after that, I want to work on cars in my garage. You must have a garage at home, do you?
I do, but I don't get to see it often because I'm always here.
Okay.
So,
Oh, here's one for you. Let's see. Someone is asking about what intake manifold you use.
okay, so up until when I ran the 696, I sold the engine, right? After that, the engine got sold.
Okay.
So prior to that, selling the engine, the combination was a Higgins cylinder head. So Higgins Racing Heads makes an Australian Cleveland style cylinder head. Very similar to what the CHI was. You know, I could talk for hours, but to try and narrow it down, me and Higgins, well, myself and Higgins, race heads, did some development work for the previous owner of CHI.
Yep. John.
With his John CID.
Yep.
And then, you know, like anything, John sold the CHI business, and he moved to America in where did he move to? Minnesota. And Higgins does his thing. I do my thing. John's doing his thing. At the time, I had one of John's custom made. He made a handful of intake manifolds. So to answer the question, we had a handful of these manifolds that were made. I think we made 20 of them.
Okay.
And I still had one, and it matched the cylinder heads from the Higgins cylinder heads. So that's what I ran for that period of time on that engine. On the next one, I might try Higgins cast manifold, and then I might try his billet one. Who knows, you know. So
choices. You got plenty of choices.
But to answer that question fairly, it was just a 4-barrel style 4500 manifold.
Okay.
No tricks, no cut opens, no cutting half. It was just as cast.
Wow. Now here's Racer D, so you might know him now. Dave is here, Frankie. So he must have been when you were in Minnesota hanging out there. He was talking about before.
Scrappy, that's the one, junkyard dog.
Yeah.
Actually, if you give me a moment.
Yeah.
So
well, thanks, guys. And Jim, if you're watching from the X-ray department, giving you a big shout out.
I still have the magazine.
Oh yeah.
Which we were featured in. And Dave is like my hero. Dave taught me a lot about engines at the Engine Masters. And when I say he taught me a lot, he taught me a lot about making power early. And, you know, we could get into a whole different conversation about dynamic compression ratio and valve events. And Tony shared a lot of stuff with me over the years as well, back then. And it's amazing how you could give a customer an engine. An engine can come in here making, say, 650 horsepower.
Yeah.
And I could redo the camshaft the way the guys have taught me, and to give me a better understanding on how an engine works down low, so a converter can couple up to an engine better and transfer the power to the rear tires. Sure. And I could give an engine back to a customer making 590 horsepower and say to them, put it in the car. If you're not happy with it, give it back to me and I'll give you your old combination back. 9 times out of 10, they will ring me up and they'll say, are you sure this has got less horsepower? Because it pulls like, a train.
Yeah.
And the difference is they probably had 150 horsepower more. I'm just saying 150 horsepower.
Arbitrary. Yeah.
Down low, where it was important for the converter to work. And that's what Dave taught me, and that's what Tony Bischoff taught me.
Okay. Now, Dave has talked to me before. He's mentioned some stuff when I commented on stuff, but I never really knew who he was. And I'm like, I'm not sure if this guy really knows what he's talking about. He sounds like he's got it down. So I got to listen to it. And then now I see this. There you go, Racer D.
There you go. Can I hold this up?
Yeah.
I look pretty young there, but there I was there.
Let me see here.
There you go. It's hard to work out how to
Yep,
do
I
this.
see it. Nice.
So
Now, is Dave in that picture?
Dave was in that picture. Yeah, that's Dave.
Show it. Let me
That's
see what he
Dave
looks
there.
like so I can tell who he is.
Right.
Got it. I see him. Okay, Dave.
So, gentleman, he's a true gentleman.
Nice. Let's see. Here's a good one here. Good day from Australia, Tim. You have been doing great with these interviews. Frank, if only Tim knew how many Clevos we had back in the 80s and 90s.
Man, unfortunately we've thrown a lot out. We shouldn't have.
Here's another question. On a Cleveland rod bearing, is there a separate, are they different upper and lower bearings in relation to the crankshaft, shoulder?
Not that I believe in. Look, it's probably been a long time since we used a factory Cleveland bearing. Not a factory.
No, like a Clevite. Like a Clevite.
Like a Clevite bearing.
Yeah.
Most of the stuff we do today is like Chevy Journal because it's more generic and everyone's got them. And in the H series bearings, yes, there's uppers and lowers.
Okay.
But I don't believe in the standard one there was.
Okay.
If you were using a standard pin size and a standard rod, no.
All right. How about this? This is kind of easy, and I'll try to keep it so we don't get off the topic. But let's say Frank's going to build a 351 Cleveland stroker. You know, I know you don't really like the big 4-inch stroke. You like stuff around 3.75, you know, from what I read about you and your motors, you know.
No, I like big strokes. You got that wrong.
Oh, good. Then I'm wrong.
I'm the opposite.
Okay. Because I read something about you building a 380 cubic inch, and it was talking about you like to have a 3.75 stroke.
It just probably depends on the combination.
Okay. Let's just say you're going to build a 383, 393 Cleveland. You know, some CHI, nothing out of the box, had nothing mean. What are the basic oil modifications you do to a Cleveland block? Simple, you know.
Like,
other than cleaning all the galleys, cleaning up all the bad angles, all the returns. That's
look. I'll be honest with you, Tim.
Yep.
I don't even do that. I don't feel there's that much of a gain. You know, like we might chamfer a few edges here or there.
Yeah.
But to me, the biggest thing a Cleveland needs that I do on all my Clevelands, and I've built thousands and thousands of them, is I prefer just to run a high volume oil pump with a good pickup and a good oil pan.
There it is. Okay.
That's as simple as you can make it. And then you can get more intricate and put restrictors in the back main. But it's not, you know, you can only send restriction to one side of the lifter bank. You can't do both because one side is what's feeding the main.
Sure. Right.
So by then, most of the volume is lost on that first traveling point.
Every time it feeds another main, as it goes down, it drops in pressure. Yeah.
So if you can keep the volume there, a standard pump that's high volume is the best way to do it.
Okay. For the 40 years I've been racing Clevelands, all I've been ever used is a 9-quart pan and a high volume pump. That's it, and some restrictors. That's it. Nothing that crazy.
I did. It's not something you like to share when you tell someone that you failed, right? But
no one wants to say that, but it's a man that can admit it.
I've done it. I've gone like I went through a period of thinking the high volume pump it was robbing horsepower.
Yep.
And it was hard on the distributor gear.
No way.
I used to think that.
Yeah.
I beat one engine up on a dyno so much, and no matter what I did. Now, this is probably because I was running loose clearances. If you ran tighter clearances, maybe it wouldn't have been such a problem. But I used to run 3.5 thou clearance against the mains, and I could not get the bearings to come off the dyno looking brand new and like no heat, no burning up. As soon as I put a brand new set of shells in the same engine, I put a high volume pump. kept the oil pressure the same. It was perfect. I pulled it off the dyno, pulled it apart, and it was perfect. So we went on to buy a flow meter, an oil flow meter.
Sure.
And I rigged up the oil pumps on a milling machine so I could use the RPM. I could spin the milling machine up and use 7,000 RPM, and I could flow the oil pumps that I had on the dyno. And even though they had the same pressure, the volume is what made the difference of filling a 5-litre container.
Right.
At the right, in the right time.
I mean, that's good. That's amazing to hear that. Someone asked this question, and I just did it with this motor. I never did it before, but I put a different oil filter adapter to allow a Wix 1268, which is a bigger opening. And I also put that front to rear line. I never ran that line ever in 40 years, but I said, I'll try it and see what happens. I've said, what the hell? When I did the oil schematic of the galleys, it looked like it made sense to me because that pressure drop from each galley, now you're adding a little more in the back and kind of increasing it. What's your opinion on that? I can already tell you don't use it.
I used to do it.
Okay.
Look, the oil filter thing, I feel that once you go past that spot,
yep,
the oil gallery drops. So between the oil filter and the point where it meets the first bearing or the second main bearing,
I know where you're talking about.
There's a restriction in there. So if you're going to open the oil filter up, it's not like you can open up the whole engine oil gallery. You're going to have a restriction past it. So I feel like the factory OEM size is adequate enough to do what it's going to do.
Okay.
And that's where I feed my engine. You know, I feed my engine with a dash, I think it was like a dash 10.
Yep.
And that's roughly what that size is.
So there you go, Kim Clark. That answers that question. Let's see. It says here, what oil pressure are you guys running?
Oh, you're going to be horrified. You're going to be horrified.
Probably like 50 pounds or something, you know, or some crazy high number.
So, I mean, on a generic Cleveland making 600 to 800 horsepower, I like to see up top around 60 PSI. You know, the lowest with a vacuum pump, I'll let an engine go through the traps is 45.
Wow. That's low for me.
Well, again, everyone gets caught up on pressure.
Right.
Pressure is not what makes the engine survive.
Volume.
It's volume.
Right.
And I've proven it. I've got a customer that has a bracket car, and he races all over Australia. And every time he brings me a race pack log, I look at the oil pressure, and it could, you know, I've seen it drop down to, on a hot day, 43 through the traps.
Wow.
You know, but his bearings are always brand new. You know, I could share pictures of them. You know, so.
You know what? The record speaks for itself then. And that's what you have to do. And that's my famous line. Do what works for you. If it works for you, stick with it. You know?
Yeah. People might not agree. But then on my Falcon twin turbo engine, 150 PSI of oil pressure everywhere. And that's because
you're feeding turbos. You're lubing the turbos.
I've got everything going on, and I probably don't have the ratio for the pump, the external pump. I could be out a few teeth on a pulley, but it works. You know, when I'm cruising in drag week and we're on like 90-degree days or 100-degree days because it's summertime when we do our drag week, I could be cruising at 2,500 RPM and it only shows about 20 PSI of oil pressure, but it doesn't hurt.
Wow. Because it's the volume. You know what I mean? You got an external wet sump, right? Is that what you're running? External wet sump?
I run a Peterson R4 external pump with a dash 16 pickup line, and it has a dash 12 exit line. So I go dash 12 to my oil filter. Yeah. And then from my oil filter to my engine, it's only dash 10.
Okay. Nice. One of my subscribers just hooked me up with that. If you see it back there, it's aluminum stuffs pan.
Yep.
It's a dry sump stuffs pan. So he sent me that and some head gaskets brand new in the package and an oil gasket set for another motor. He said, this is for your next motor.
Oh,
So
well,
thank you, Ron Gorse, GM Killer, he goes by. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. People send a lot of stuff to me, and I appreciate that. It's nice.
No, it's cool.
So let's see. Here's one for you. This is kind of long. Can you read that, Frank?
Just, yeah, it's a bit blurry on my end, but yeah.
Okay. Hi, guys. Do you have Clevos when heated up, drop to 20 PSI under acceleration, it raises to 55 or 60? Do I have a problem? Large sump, high volume pump, and front to back line, just like we just talked about.
Yeah, no, that's normal. That's what mine does. But mine revs up to 160, you know what I mean? Like 150, 160. Yep. So
my engine stays about 70, probably 75 when it's cold, and going through the traps at 8,200, it's probably about 68, sometimes 72, right in that range.
That's a nice. And then, do you have a vacuum pump?
I do, a Star vacuum pump.
Yeah.
Yep. But it's only at like 10.
Come on, Tim. What are you doing, man?
Well, my wrist.
You're leaving power on the table.
What do I need? Like 16?
Oh, don't ask me. I'm terrible. I like to run about 20, but people go, no, you shouldn't do that. But
well, the issue with mine is I don't have the right wrist pins. I wouldn't want to do that and gall them up and have an issue until I get that straightened around. Yeah. The DragBoss, I'll be doing it I'll put it up to 20 for you.
Yeah.
Because it can do it. A Star pump, man, those things can make vacuum.
Yeah. And I suppose that's one of the things you've got to look at. You know, like we say, 20 is like a number, 20 inches of vacuum, I can say, is like 20 pounds of boost. Two different vacuum pumps. I don't know how it affects inside the engine.
Yeah.
If you have a 4-vane versus a 3-vane, I haven't gone into the science to see is 20 inches the same everywhere.
Now is that the Peterson R4 you have?
Correct. Yeah.
So that has a built-in vacuum pump, right?
No, I don't run vacuum pump on my engine.
You don't?
No.
Okay.
Just an external oil pump.
I don't know this one.
FEs, we do have FE motors in Australia.
I've never heard of them.
It's a big block Ford.
Yeah, no. I mean, I've never heard of them in Australia. No one ever talks about them there.
Oh, no, we've got them. We have them. I just don't like them. I stay clear.
My buddy's a big FE racer. And, I mean, it's like a Cleveland. You either love a certain type of engine or a Hemi, and that's what you kind of gravitate towards. Yes. But I always hate the intake. It's so heavy, and I don't like water in my intake,
I don't. Yeah, that business of sharing the intake ports and the water ports. And
oh yeah,
it's a scary thought.
And that guy's asked about that oil that you just answered that question to. Thought he had the wrong oil.
No.
I mean, if the engine's working good and it seems happy, who cares? It's a number, I guess. That's how you kind of look at it.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of people on here. Let's see, we have 121 people. And you're probably the first guy I've talked to that really knows that builds Clevelands on a current basis. And a lot of these guys are into the Cleveland stuff and the pro stock stuff since I started bringing that back together. Have you built high port Cleveland motors?
No.
Okay.
The high ports that we do, the problem is no one wants to pay the money to spend the time on the cylinder heads. That's
an iron one I'm talking about. Iron 4V high port.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, what we generically do to most of our street car motors is we put a port filler on the intake, which,
right. Yep.
It raises the floor and you don't change the roof of the port because we're using manifolds to suit, such as a Scott Cook makes a beautiful manifold for these kind of motors, and you can make anywhere between 500 and 650 horsepower with little flat tappet cams, and it just turns a 4V cylinder head very I won't say like a Yates head, but like an older C3 Yates head
Scott Cook's heads, his 4V heads those things flow, man. You
Yeah.
know, Aaron Morgan worked on that port design, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, I did some testing on an engine in the early days with Scott Cook. So yeah, I was one of the first guys to get my hands on one. So no, they're a great unit.
What intake we're using is his dual plane intake, or we're using one of his like this
The
kind
first,
of.
yeah, the first engine was a dual plane.
Okay.
And then I did a bunch of engines with the Supremacy manifold.
Okay. Now here's something Racer D said about oil, which I'll have to read. I'll read it to you if you can read it. You have to remember that the oil flowing down the lifter galleys is starting and stopping as the lifter open and close in the galleys. Good point. Like a pulsation, you're getting that harmonics of that oil flow.
But don't forget the gallery is offset. So it still has a continuous track to get from one end to the other.
Because it's going behind it.
It's going behind the lift, beside the lifter, not even behind it, but yeah, beside it.
Beside it, yep. Let's see what else we have. It says we have a few. This is interesting. I don't know. I have a few FEs, a 390, and my XA coupe. Great engines.
Yeah, XA's a 1972, 1973 two-door Falcon.
I'll tell you, I never can get this straight. The XE, the XW, the QA. There's so many abbreviations. I look at them and I'm like, wait a minute, is this? I don't know how you guys keep them straight.
It'd be like the Mustang series. You got to know which is a 95 SN.
Yeah. Nope. I know what you mean. C3 Corvette. I mean, I know what you're saying, but it is interesting.
Yeah.
So we kind of talked about the Clevelands. Do you see problems now with solid lifter cams going bad? There's all this rash of having solid lifters go bad. Now, is it the metal in the lifter, the cam? Is it less zinc in the oil? What's your experience on that?
Tim, I wish I had a magic wand to work this one out, because it becomes so frustrating to put an engine on a dyno and you're running it in with a flat tappet cam.
Yeah.
You've got the right amount of zinc in the oil. You've got everything going, weak valve springs just to do a heat cycle. So before I assemble a Cleveland with a flat tappet cam, we have a machine. We purchased a long time ago an old lifter grinding machine. So I do not use lifters just out of the box and put them in an engine. I like to run them through my machine. Now, it might be a bit over the top, but that's what I like to do, because with what I've seen come out of a box, it's horrifying to know that some poor bloke's or woman's going to put them into an engine and not know what they're really doing. Yeah.
Right.
So that's the first thing we do, and we make sure that we have the right taper on the lifter.
Okay.
And the next thing I do is we put the camshaft in a between centers in the lathe, and I like to run a dial indicator across each lobe, making sure that it has at least 1 thou minimum of taper.
Okay.
And those two combinations is what helps the lifter turn. If the lifter stops turning, it's gonna bang up a lobe. Then to help the process running in, I make sure that we have a valve spring that only has about 60 to 80 pounds of seat pressure and might only have 100 open, 100 something open. And we make sure that we've put every additive in the oil that we can to ensure that it's getting every bit of help, knowing that, most generic oils don't have zinc in it like it used to.
But who runs generic oil? I mean, I always run like Brad Penn. That's all I run really. Brad Penn 2050. You guys got special break-in oil that you use?
Well, I used to use a Brad Penn. I just use breaking in oil.
Yeah.
But now I just generally use a Lucas oil.
Okay.
It's still a breaking in. How much of the zinc? I'm not an oil specialist, so I can't tell you. All I know is, I understand they want to save the whales, but how much of that oil has been reduced or how much has been modified? Because when I first started building engines, 30 years ago, we could put a camshaft in a car, run the thing in for 20 minutes.
20 minutes, yep. Good
and go into a burnout down the street and never look back.
just when I was a kid, when I started at 16 building an engine at Cleveland, when I was running 14s, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Running a solid lifter cam. I remember running that thing in $2,000 for 20 minutes or whatever it was. Never had an issue.
Yeah.
Now I have people that ask me these questions. Oh, I just built this motor and I ran it in the right way, and now I took out the whole engine.
Yeah.
You know, if it's heartbreaking for the guy that put all of his heart and soul in that.
It's even frustrating for me because, you know, when you schedule the dyno for a day and you've got to pull the engine off because I want to, you know, do it properly. I want to pull the oil pan off, the timing cover, and wash everything out, pull the camshaft that's just been beaten up.
Sure.
But
you'll
be surprised how many camshafts I've had to send back that don't have 1,000 taper. They have zero taper. As if someone was in a hurry that day on the machine and they didn't really set the grinder up.
And then if you look at the base circle, the bottom of the lifter, it's got I think it's a 3-degree something. It's a small little
2 degrees,
yeah. And that's missing is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So they must be mass produced somewhere like China or something. Mass produced, boom, there you go.
Yeah. You know, you can mark each lifter as you've assembled the motor with a marker, like a yellow marker.
Yeah.
As you're running through the lash, you can see each one turn. And if it doesn't turn, well, you'd stop right there.
Okay. Frank, what are your thoughts on the 2-barrel closed Aussie heads? Someone's asking.
I did a lot of work with those. We call them a 2V cylinder head here, which is the small port Cleveland. Inspired by Bob Glidden, I tried welding the roof and raising the port. And I actually ran pretty fast once doing that. But then I found a love for the 4V because it was so much easier to make power with the 4V.
Sure. But they can hold their own is what you're saying.
They can with the right work done to them. But then the question becomes, you know, bang for buck. You're weighing up the cost of the time spent. If you can do it yourself, great. But to pay me to do it, I would talk anyone out of it to say it's not worth the money.
There's a guy that sent me a video. I think the guy's name is Steve Toff, but he has a buddy that has a Falcon with a Cleveland with those 2V heads. That thing's running like 980s or something, you know, a lot of work to those heads.
Yeah. And it's not possible, you know, to do, but it just becomes non-efficient to do it for each person that walks in the front door.
Right. How much do you want to spend?
And I can tell you now, I do not like the smell of cast iron in my nose. And as you can see, I have a big nose, so I can inhale a lot of cast iron.
But now you got a lot of aluminum back there, so you should be okay. Now, here's something from Dave. This is interesting here. Frank, you have to preheat your oil to at least 160 degrees before you start your engine. The additive package is activated by heat.
My problem is I haven't got time to heat my oil. So I pretty much, you know, run the engine up, warm the engine up to temperature, you know, put it on the 2-step, and I'm ready to go to the start line.
And I don't know if he was talking about why the cams are going bad.
Well,
I don't know if that's what he's relating that to.
Okay, we're going back to, yes, I'm not sure. But
maybe he's saying you got to heat the oil up to activate. That's why people are having all these problems. But who has oil heaters for the guy in his backyard garage? You know what I mean, Dave? So
I'm not sure. That's a good point to make.
Yeah. I never knew that. That's something to think about or research. Yes. Someone on here will look it up and they'll get back on the comments. You know, a lot of people comment on this. They'll be able to watch this. A lot of people can't make this time that we set this up with, but they're going to rewatch this and then they'll ask questions about it. And there's a lot of smart people on here.
No, but that's a good point. You know, like I've never thought about heating the oil up and what does that introduce to, you know, to help the breaking in procedure.
That's a good point. That's something to think about. But mostly like all these high dollar cars, they all have oil heaters on them. They're all heating up their oil. All these pro stock, at least in the States, you know what I mean? They all got oil heaters on them.
Yeah. You got to be careful. Let me tell you, with methanol and oil heaters, bad combination if you walk away from that thing.
Really? Because the fuel's going right into the oil. It contaminates the oil so bad because you're running so much. Yeah.
I've seen guys. Yeah, I've seen in recent time. I've seen guys blow their dry sump tanks open.
I never even knew that.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Someone will get some information out of this. The can't really see what he's saying here. It says 393 stock iron Cleveland 4-barrel heads, Scott Cook dual plane, 730 vacuum secondary carb. Cam is 242, 46 at 50, 600 lift, 10.8 to 1, 500. What carb? Blah, blah, blah. You need a bigger carb, man.
Yeah. Get rid of that back secondary.
Use 1,000 CFM. You know?
Put a 950 on that.
950, yep. If it had like 11 to 1 or 12, you'd be with 1,000, man. That thing would be cranking.
Yeah.
Another guy says I made 603 horsepower with the CHI 2V heads out of Cleveland.
Yep. We have a package that makes about 620 with a flat tappet cam.
Well, that's nice.
408,
Right.
yeah.
Here's what he says.
Yes. Okay, thanks, Dave. So yeah, I might look into that one.
Hi, John. That's another subscriber. Yeah, that's good to know. So 620 horse is what you're saying, and it's a flat tappet cam.
Yeah, and that's the CHIs out of the box. Like just a very simple package that.
I mean, that's what people want. People, Cleveland's not hard to make 500 horsepower. Even 6 isn't that hard. But a nice combination like that for 620, and that's a turnkey motor.
Yes, and don't get me wrong, Tim.
Yeah.
I'm sure guys could really re-finesse the engine to make
Of
more.
course. Yeah.
We're talking about the average guy coming in going, I have it's very popular out here to have a car like the shape of my white car.
Yeah.
They call them XYs or XWs. They were the fastest production car in the 1970s. And they are here, like they've flooded the market with them here, and everyone wants one. So a lot of them have Cleveland's.
Yep.
And that's where a lot of these engines go into. So they're a good driving, fun package. Race on the weekend, have a bit of fun.
Sure. A dependable motor you don't have to mess around with, really.
No, I can send them out the door, and I offer to set the tappets for them once a year. Come back and I'll check your lash,
This guy talked about the oil, Brad Penn oil. Yeah.
Kendall.
I've been there. I went to the Kendall Foundry in Bradford, Pennsylvania when I was a mechanic on a tour. So I saw how they made all the oil and stuff. Gave me a free jacket. I still got it.
Yeah, well.
Throw nothing out.
I'd like to say good things about Kendall, but I had a bad run. And the service wasn't there to back it up. So a bit disappointing, but then we moved on to other brands and we found what we needed.
Thanks, Bill Wolf. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Now, here's an unusual. Let me see if I can find it here. Here's a buddy of mine, Dave Silva. The funny thing is, he runs a Cleveland and a Buick Grand National. So he put a Cleveland in a Buick and races it and sprays it. And it's pretty fast. So good to see you, Dave Silva. There it is. This is what you like, fuel tech.
So, yeah. No, fuel tech is, it's been kind to me, so I can't complain about that.
It says, Frankie, why are you not using my CHI 208 head? That's Dave.
We still do on those 420-inch engines that we do, 408, sorry, that make the 620, that we use them. As you can see, you've jammed me up, Dave. We need to have a conversation on the phone for that one. But look, lots of things have changed over the years. I remember when Dave first made those cylinder heads, they were a little bit more. It was like someone's put their personal touch, and they were amazing out of the box. We still use them; they're still great cylinder heads and everything. But I think there's so many other things around it now. It's it's hard to just stick to one, putting all my eggs in one basket like we used to.
So he developed that head.
Dave did, Dave. I believe Dave. So we used to run. Dave came out here in 2005, 2006 to Australia, and he spent a week with me.
Yep.
And I built a 427 engine with Dave specking out the camshaft, the compression, the valve events. And back then, we were running a 225 cylinder head, CHI cylinder head that John had made, which I think that had the input from, I believe, Dave, Bischoff, Kazi. I'm not sure exactly. And it made great power. Like Dave came, we put it on an engine dyno, and we made 730 horsepower. And the camshaft only had like 259 degrees of duration. So for me, it was the first time I'd seen so much horsepower with less duration than we've ever used. But the engine made amazing horsepower from 4,500 all the way through to 6,500. And we put that engine in the car, and we were the first ones at the time that was running our 98 pump fuel, which is very similar to your 93 pump fuel, I believe.
Okay.
And we went to a racetrack, and we basically ran the first 9-second pass in a 3,500 pound car, 3,500 pound car, naturally aspirated with a single carbine. And we ran 992.
Wow.
Yeah. So then Dave went on to develop the 208, I believe, which was a phenomenal cylinder head and made more torque and more power with a smaller port.
Velocity.
Yeah.
Filling that cylinder.
Yep.
So here's a question, because I can read them on the side. And the kind of the consensus is this, and we'll do two things. I don't know what your time frame is. We've been talking for an hour and 22, so I don't want to take you away from what you have to.
I'm good. I'm good. It's Sunday morning here, midday, so I'm good.
So from your experience, from the aftermarket for aluminum Cleveland heads, you got CHI, you got Scott Cook, you got AFD, you got Higgins, you got who else? That probably covers it. Who do you find that you use the most if you're building Clevelands? We'll stick with that, and then we'll change it to Windsor.
Okay, so if I'm building like just generic 500 to 600 horsepower engines, we use CHI.
Okay.
And I use the 208 mostly on that. AFD has changed hands. Now that he's changed hands from Dave, which I knew Dave on a personal level. Is now being purchased by another friend of mine called Zoran from Competition Engines in Australia. They have a good engine shop building a lot of Clevelands as well. We used to race when we were younger against each other, so there's a bit of rivalry there.
Nice.
But now we speak on a weekly basis, and he's purchased it, and I believe he wants to reproduce them for the average Joe Blow as well, with a head and intake package. So, you got Scott Cook, you got Higgins. Higgins I use for mainly high-end customers, bracket racers, people that want to make from high 600s out to 900 plus. Scott Cook is great. We use them for period date style cars that have a Cleveland engine, because he's made his head look like a very stock looking appearance once it's painted blue. So, if you had a Mustang that had a Cleveland and it's a matching numbers car, but you want to, make it a 408 with a nicer cylinder head, that's perfect. We'd use Scott Cook's. Now, Scott Cooks, you can make, like Adam Cope, you can make 1,000 horsepower with them.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I don't use a lot of them in that area because I have a connection. Higgins is only 10 minutes up the road from me, and Scott is an hour away from me. So, you know, it's just one of those things. You're going to use who's convenient, obviously, for business. And CHI for, the average 500 to 600 horsepower package.
Nice. Okay. What about now for the Windsor, the big heads that you see around here, the high port heads, 240cc high port heads. What else do they have for? Then you got the Yates C3 stuff for a Windsor, the SC1, all those kind of things. Now they have SC2 that I saw that's crazy looking.
It's SC1 cylinder heads and
Brodix.
The big cylinder heads, like the Neil Brodix cylinder head series?
Yep, 300, I think they were.
Yeah, they're all great cylinder heads. The biggest problem in Australia is people don't like to chop the front of their cars up.
Okay.
It becomes another expense on the build that I've proven you don't need to do it because my car still runs factory suspension, shocker towers, and so on.
Right.
So all those cylinder heads are not popular here for that reason. So to get back to a Windsor inline cylinder head, generically, we would use the Edelbrock 7720.
7721. Yeah. Yep.
And we found we could make 850 horsepower. They were great. Then I had a company called Next Gen Engineering, and they're at the top of Australia and Queensland.
Okay.
And based off a cylinder, I had a bunch of customers with these cylinder heads, but we were finding they used to crack between the exhaust port and the intake port. And one of those customers I had was a real serious twin turbo guy, and we we contracted Next Gen Engineering to build a billet cylinder head and intake manifold, and that was a phenomenal head. We run 65 pound in this thing.
Wow.
It runs. It's a stock suspension 275 car. It's a short wheelbase car, and it runs 420s on the 8th mile. Small block Ford, man.
They go, man. I'll tell you.
It's the fastest small block in 275 car in Australia.
Wow.
Tim Cross, yeah. Look up Tim Cross on YouTube, Cortina.
Great minds think alike, Tim's. There you go. Now, this is kind of funny. You might get a kick out of this. This guy remembers doing Nathan Higgins concrete at his house years ago. He was working from home. Amazing guy. Traded work for heads.
He's definitely a dude that's climbed the ranks with hard work. I do remember him grinding heads from home. He used to work for, in Australia, we don't have NASCAR. We have what they call V8 Supercar Series.
Okay.
Which is, it's similar in some ways, but it's road racing. So he comes from that background, and, he grew into now a shop that he runs, I think, 5 CNC machines.
Wow.
Doing constant CNC porting.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Man, now that would be something to put on that DragBoss I'm building. Instead of these old Ford heads I'm putting on, put a set of his Higgins heads and intake.
Yeah, look, he makes a great product, like everyone. Like he made a great product. Scott Cook makes a great product. They're all guys that have worked hard to develop something that they believed in. And Tim, credit to them all. They've done it. John that ran CHI. Yeah. He ran CHI from a small corner into a big factory, and then sold the business, and moved on to CID. And, like all these guys have climbed the ranks, and they've all done it with hard work. Let me tell you.
There's no doubt about it. And they're smart. I mean, they understand head flow. They're smart. They get it.
I'll tell you what made them a lot smarter than, what makes them smart people is none of them had their heads up their butt, where they felt their ego was too good. They've all worked with someone smarter than them.
Okay, that's true.
And that's what's made everyone good. And it's no different to me. You know, it's nice to hear you talk and say that, you know, I'm a great engine builder and whatnot. But I've learned from good people like Dave, you know, in my corner, the guys from Proline in my corner.
Yep.
My cousin that runs Dandy Engines, the finder of Dandy
Lou.
Engines.
Yeah.
Lou, he's one of the best machinists that I've ever seen in all my years mingling with so many different people. And he's right here. And that's what makes my product look good because, again, machining something correct is so important to begin with. But because he's not a social media person and he's not out there,
Yeah.
many people know of him. So it's, you know, all these people have done it. What I'm trying to say is their success has come from hard work. Just like Bob Glidden and, you know, the finder of Dart, you know.
Dick Baskin.
Yeah.
You know, Glidden, Rusty told me Glidden would sit in his garage, in his shop, and work on a set of cylinder heads for like 2 weeks straight, like 10 hours or 12 hours a day. You know, epoxy, putty, whatever, change, port, take it out, regrind, you know, weeks to get a set of cylinder heads. You know, those intake manifolds, they welded them to straighten those runners. The hours that went into that. Who thought of that back then? Innovators, you know?
Tim, when you put that video up and I watched that video and you zoomed in on the intake manifold, I had to pause it and just stare at that manifold and think, you know, we saw the glory runs. We saw all the glory stuff on YouTube. What you don't see is picture what that guy must have gone through, spending weeks and weeks on a cylinder head. You know, Bob would have spent, God knows, gone to the dyno or gone to the track and it didn't work. And then he's had to get, you know, think about how he's going to bounce back from that.
And the funny thing is, he didn't have a dyno. They never had a dyno, you know? Not until, dang it, someone told me who had the dyno and how they all started getting into it. And I can't think of it now. But yeah, that was all trial and error, blood, sweat, and gears. That's how I phrase it.
I picture this guy doing what he did and then bolting him to an engine and then going to a racetrack. And, you know, going to a racetrack is not like bolting the engine to a dyno. There's so many other factors. You know, did the converter, was a converter, or back then it would have been manual, so it would have been clutch. So,
yeah.
You know, was the clutch making the car run slower? Was the cylinder head changes? So.
And load their car up and drive 900 miles to go to another race to test and then turn around and drive back 900 miles back to the same place they were at to race. I mean, that's how it was. That's all they did. I mean, Bob said,
conditions, weather conditions.
It's crazy.
We are spoiled.
We are. We really are. That's the truth. Let me see. I get back to another question here and see what it says. I just watched Tim's car and oh my God, fast. My car's not fast compared to his. Not at all. Frank knows flows 4Vs. Yep. Let's see. Here's one here. I admire Frank and Zorn and all the Australian innovators. I grind heads at home and soon taking the plunge to do what I am passionate about my living. I admire the courage of guys. We admire your passion that you can do that.
That's right. That's a talent, you know, to be able to do that and be focused and not give up. You think about it. It's easy to do one port. You get one port right. Now let's times it another 7 times.
Right.
So,
I'll try it again and see. Here's a question about a Profab Cortina.
oh,
I haven't seen it in a long time. I actually love that car. Andrew.
thanks, Andrew. No, look, so we had a Cortina is an Australian, and I think it was a UK.
Know what it looks like? Yep.
Yeah, you guys know what it looks like.
Yep.
So we did back in 2009, he used to run a 6-cylinder in the car, and he used to run like mid to low 8s with a 6-cylinder, which was very fast, a single turbo. And then we we decided to build a twin turbo V8, and we bought some cylinder heads off an American guy who was into super stock. And I only remember his first name. His first name was Manny something.
Manny.
I'd have to get back to you on that one and put it in the comments. And these were one of the most beautiful sort of D3 cylinder heads we had ever seen. And we bolted them to an 8.2 deck from memory, 8.2 or 8.7 deck. And we made a 370 cubic inch with the class rules back then was twin 70 mil turbos.
Okay. And
we used to run a 28 10.5 inch slick. That was the class rules. And it was a 4-barrel intake with injector bungs welded in. We used to run Q16.
Yep.
And the first time out, we had Steve Petty here again helping us tune a bunch of cars. We made about 4 hits to the 8th mile, and I'll never forget, the record for the class was Mod Street. It was called Modified Street. And the class, I think it was like 770 or 780s at the time. And I'll never forget Steve Petty telling Joe Gauchi, the owner of the car, all right, Joe, run it out the back door. Should run a 745. And boom, I think we ran a 747. And annihilated the record with a small block Ford again, you know.
Wow.
And that car went on to be undefeated for 2 years straight.
It's amazing.
Tim, they thought it was impossible to make that much power. And people were protesting us. We had to go to tribunals about the turbos being clipped, what the pronunciation of clipped turbo wheels, meaning that they thought we were cheating with the turbos.
Yeah.
And they were genuine 70 mil turbos.
Wow.
So,
I mean, that's got to be like 2 point something horsepower per cubic inch.
I've never worked it out. You know, because it's boosted, we never worked it out. But
yeah,
we went on to running 680s in that car.
I don't know what clip the turbos are. What does that do? Change the IR if you're clipping that?
Yeah, I haven't really, it's a long time since I looked it up, but
yeah,
I had all the literature on clipping turbos and what it meant, but it basically means that you were changing the shape of the wheel.
Okay.
To the class, you know, which we at the time gave the rules to Precision Turbos, and they made the turbos to suit the rules. So no one could ever find or, you know, catch us out to say that we did something wrong. But they tried. That's what happens when you're undefeated for 2 years.
They start, oh, we got to get this guy out of it. They did the same to Bob Glidden. Every time that guy won, they add more weight on it, you know?
Yeah.
Here's one for you. Oops. Frank convinced him to run drag radials on the Cougar. I do have drag radials on it. Drag radial slick.
Yeah. Well, there you go. It's the same thing. It's just a sleep.
I'll tell you, it's worth a 10th off the 60 right there, which is 2 off the big. Just going with a drag radial slick, you know?
I can remember when people were starting to try the radial stuff here in Australia. And let's remember, radials do need a lot more glue than a slick track. But I think the advantage I had was the fact that the leaf spring and the cow track, it's an automatic car that wants to separate. And that's the advantage I had over the guys that didn't have. If someone had like a Mustang rear end car, a 4-bar with a short top arm, they struggled because the first thing that every car like that wanted to do was it wanted to go downwards. The body wanted to go down. The suspension wanted to go down.
Yep.
The leaf spring car, it was an automatic effect that the body wants to separate.
Right.
And as soon as I put radials on the car, it was night and day difference to drive going down the track. It felt safer, it felt smoother. And my 60 foots picked up a bunch. You know, I was like, holy shit, what did I do?
Well, I'll tell you, the monoleaf, I don't know who made your monoleaf. Who made that?
Mine were made in Queensland by a mob called Gazard Brothers. They actually sponsor a few
Yeah, I
guys.
know they are.
Yeah.
Back in '98, John Calvert used my Cougar to make the monoleaf spring that everybody runs in a Ford Mustang or a Cougar now. Back then, I was just building my car, and I called him up, and he's like, you know what? I want to make a monoleaf spring. You want to help me? I said, sure, I'll help you. So he sent me springs. I put them up, measured it, sent it back to him. He sent it back, bolted up in there, made the change, and that's how he got the monoleaf for Mustang or Cougar.
Wow.
So he gave me that spring, the Caltrax, the Rancho shocks, all that stuff for helping him out in '98. I ran the same leaf spring for 20 something years, 127, 60 foot. That ain't bad for, old street car,
Oh, man. He is definitely the innovator, and he deserves all the credit for the Caltrax.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, I think in recent times, it's easier to buy them locally or, from people close to you or whatever.
Sure.
But take nothing away from that gentleman. He was the innovator of leaf springs and made leaf springs what they are today.
I'm telling you, he helped me out. So he's the one. I ain't going to get into how I'm going to make a video on it. I don't want to give my secret away. How I learned how to do wheelies and what my car needed to do to be the wheelie, because I saw, like you did, I went to a transmission shop when I was a kid building my first Cleveland, and it was a 66 GTO or 65 with the biggest wheel stand in a transmission shop. I said, I want to do that one day. I want my car to, you know what I mean? And that's how I went on that goal, like you did. And so I just switched to a slider suspension. It's getting put on right now from my regular old shackle. So I wonder how that's going to change, going from that to slider.
Yeah. Well, I didn't see a great change in mine.
Okay.
But I felt like it probably gave me more tuning ability. Like I didn't see an instant change is what I'm trying to say.
Right.
It's not like I picked up 5 numbers or anything, but I think it allowed me to look at things differently and readjust things differently to then progress.
I ran the stock Ford shackle, and then I bought this, Dell aluminum bushing type shackle with grease fittings and all this stuff. Never made a bit of difference. The stock Ford shackle with some grease on the bushings was the best thing I could do, and keep them loose,
Yeah. People used to think we were crazy keeping him loose.
Nope. I use a lock nut, and then I put a little paint stripe on it and check it every few months or what. Check this out. Wow. Thank you, Mario. We appreciate that. Brilliant live stream, fellas. Frank had my brother's 408 stroker on his dyno 3 or 4 years ago. He got just over 650 horsepower. Motor still runs amazingly. Great stuff, Frank.
Thanks, Mario.
We appreciate that. Thank you.
That's nice.
And like I said, I split the money with you. It's only fair. The rest of that money, guys, goes into my car fund for the engines that we're building. I don't take it. I put it right into that fund, and it goes right back into this channel. So you guys can see this stuff come to life. So thank you. Now, I never heard this. Calvert came up with the idea of the bars in his sleep one night. I'll ask him. I'll text him and ask him sometime.
Like most of my dumbest ideas or greatest ideas have come from my 3 o'clock morning walk to the bathroom. So that's a very positive comment.
Like you, probably. I have to write everything down because I can't remember. I'll tell you, if you guys are on here and listen, this is kind of aside, but I noticed once you get past about 55, I noticed I started to not remember the things like I used to. I have to write stuff down more, and so I'll be thinking, it's like, what was that thought? And it's gone.
So I'm not good at writing things down because I lose my notes. So okay. I use my iPhone now. I just talk to Siri.
Oh, do you really? And she just keeps track of everything.
That poor woman must hate my guts. Oh, here he goes again. Here he goes again.
Here's an easy one for you. A good question for you, but I think I know the answer. Here you go. It's just the oiling, for the high horsepower engines you're building, I think. strength?
Look, I've just never had my hands on as many Cleveland aftermarket blocks with a a main priority oil system. It was just always easier to buy dart blocks or world blocks in a Windsor base, and that's just how it just rolled from there.
You know,
I think if Cleveland blocks were available as much as a Windsor block,
sure.
It'd be either.
Well, Tim Meyer from DragBoss Performance Products is doing the Aftermarket Cleveland. I mean, his goal is, if let's say you could do 100 blocks and sold them for 25, I don't know, I'm just using this arbitrary number. Tim, don't take that as personal, but 2,500 or 2,800. If you could sell a block and have availability, hey, things might change. I doubt they're going to ever outgrow the Windsor because it's too big, but it'd be a whole nother ball game, I think, for that block, you know?
Man, you know, we talk about outgrowing stuff, and we talk about, like, I can remember thinking, actually, I was racing my car back in 1999.
Yep.
And John, the finder of CHI and created CHI, at the time, the only cylinder head he was making was a 6-cylinder Chrysler cylinder head, because he was into Chryslers and so was his brother. And we were running a class that was like a 11.0 bracket, and I was running it with a Cleveland engine with a Yates manifold. So because my block was 9.2,
yeah,
the Yates manifold was made for a 9.5, I believe.
Cut it down, yeah.
And we had to machine, like, I can't remember if it was 250 thou off each flange, where it was down to like nothing. And we had to make a paper gasket, and we used to put the port fillers in the intake. It was a lot of work for something, and we couldn't buy anything, right? So everything was just like made up. And I had just beaten John's brother in a race. I'm going to the finals. Someone oiled the track down, and John sat in my car with me, and he was telling me all about this aluminum cylinder head that he's going to make for a 6-cylinder Chrysler. And I looked at him and I said to him, John, why wouldn't you make a Cleveland head in aluminum? I know you can buy like a back then a C3. There was different versions of the Yates head.
Sure.
But in Australia, whatever they cost in America, you had to double them plus freight. So it was very expensive for the average guy. You know, I had just been married 1 year. I had a big mortgage for my first home.
Yep.
And I couldn't afford to do that and spend $5,000 on a pair of cylinder heads. I said, why can't we make something based off a cylinder head like a 4V with the filler tongues? And he looks at me and goes, do you reckon we'd sell them? And I'm like, oh, I don't know if we're going to sell them. And it's a big risk, because back then, I think to go to a patent maker,
yeah,
you needed 40,000 or 30,000 Australian dollars.
It's 30 right now.
Yeah. And you know what? John back at the time had the availability the freedom to do things, because he was a single man on the run. And I'd hate to imagine how many cylinder heads he sold while he had the business.
Wow.
So we think we have reached the peak of something like that. But I'm telling you, the Cleveland and the Windsor, it's like the LS. I'd hate to imagine how many are out there. So I reckon Tim will have, is it Tim that makes the DragBoss?
Tim Meyer, yes.
Tim Meyer, that's the one.
Yep.
I think he will have no drama selling blocks. No dramas. I reckon as many as he can make, he would sell.
Nice. I'll just add those high port cylinder heads on one of his loads coming over to you. You can go there and pick them up. We can build that high port Cleveland.
We'll do something.
You know? And your buddy here, Dave, said he sonic tested 50 Windsor blocks and never saw one that was thinner than 200 thousandths. You know, and the bottom line is a Cleveland is a weak block. I hate to say it, but it was not made the best way with the oiling system. From 6,500, it's good without messing with it. But we're in here in the US, they after 74, and I'm making a video on that, it's gone. So you guys took it over, and you know, with the XEs and all that kind of stuff that's going on.
We used them all the way up until the 1980s, I believe.
82, I think. Am I right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Even if, rounded off to mid 80s, I'd say. But yeah.
So there's still, when I see something, someone talks about parts there. Oh, you want this Cleveland block? It's $1,200. I'm like, what? You can buy them if you still find them. I mean, a couple $100 you can. I got 4 over here sitting. You know.
So there's 2 types of Cleveland blocks.
Yeah.
You've got an Aussie casted Cleveland block.
Yep.
Which has the square patch casted at the front.
Yep.
And then you have what they call the D shape, which has a casting of a D.
Got both of them.
Just,
yep.
Just above the fuel pump. So at the moment, and this might help the American viewers, if you've got one of those D blocks,
got one.
I believe the Australians are paying somewhere in the vicinity of $2,000 for one.
What? Look at, there's one over there, I think, sitting over there on the stand. It's from 1969.
So you know? There is a period. Well, there is a period date vehicle that we have, which is the same shape as mine, XW, XYs. Recently, there was one sold, matching numbers car with a D block for $1.3 million.
Yeah, I've heard that. That's insane.
So anyone that's got a genuine GT style car that needs that D block, they are going to pay the money. So I'd hate to imagine, Tim, how many I've thrown out.
Wow. Me too. I give them away. I had like 20 of them at one time. And every motor I built, I just started with a new block and threw it aside because I wanted a fresh bore on every one.
I believe, if I'm not mistaken, but the D blocks, I think were the worst casting.
Really?
Well, they had the thinner bores. Yeah.
Well, my buddy just offered, well, he didn't just offer it me, but the bottom line is he's got an XE block, one of the original Don Tope ones, not the pillow block, the ones before that. They had the Sonic sheet with them. So I'm going to get that and use that for my Pro Stock build. You know, it's all ready to go, screw in core plugs. I mean, it's a nice piece. I don't have to mess around with it. And I think he Sonic that. I want to say those walls are 280.
Wow.
Something like that, or 250. I have to look for the Sonic sheet. So
yeah, it's a good block. That's a keeper, that one.
What do you think is too thin for a clean, like, you know, go with a non-thrust side, you know, or thrust, kind of compare them.
We just Sonic tested 2 blocks during the week, and all the way around they were down to like 80,000.
Whoa!
All the way around.
Wow, that's paper thin.
And the most distraught part of it all, their standard ball.
Okay, wow, that's still paper thin. I wouldn't even want to run that block with any cylinder pressure.
I'm surprised. Yeah, that's. I mean, look, I think they survived so long because it didn't have any cylinder pressure and it just puddled along in Grandpa's car.
Right, it's running 8 to 1. It's got no pressure, no stress. You know. Let's see. I don't know what he's trying to say, but I think what he's saying, a stroker block. I think that's what they're asking.
Yeah, so a 434 would be based off a dart block. You wouldn't do like the biggest we can go comfortably is 408 cubic inches on a Cleveland, unless you overbore it to 60 over, and I think it becomes 412,
18 or something. I don't know.
Yeah, something like that. But
yeah,
without crunching the numbers, but then that runs the risk of just getting into trouble.
Do you fill your blocks?
If I'm going to do something that makes it around 600 horsepower, I'd like to put a little bit of Moroso concrete.
Yep.
Just up to where the water pump entry is.
Right.
Through the timing cover.
I don't know if they.
I've never had people complain that the motors run too hot or.
The only issue that I hear about is that the real issue is the oil temperature getting too hot. And that's where you need either oil cooler or just pay attention to it. You know, I put a gauge in mine so I keep track of it, but I don't know what let's see. That's exactly what Aussie Brad Girdwood said in 1988, 80,000 on thrust faces, 100,000 too little. There you
Correct, Dean.
Hey, Dean. I only go 40,000 because of the walls. I don't know. That's a crapshoot. I never sonic nothing. I bore them out, put them together. They're going to run, or they're going to run, or you're going to waste time with all that, you know.
You know, we talk about sonic testing, but what we're not catching on a sonic tester is behind the cylinders, we don't know where the joint of the casting is.
Sure.
And if there's any imperfections in the casting. So the sonic tester will only measure the spot you're measuring. And it's near impossible to measure each section of the ball.
Sure.
Unless someone's got a, some sort of X-ray machine that can show you. And, that's going to be an expensive exercise that most people with a Cleveland block wouldn't pay someone to do.
No.
So.
And I know what you're saying. I've looked in there with my camera at where the cylinders are attached to the base and kind of explore. I made a video. I was going to put it up, but I don't know if people want to watch that stuff. But it's kind of interesting when you see how
it is. It is. I've cut the side open on a Cleveland block and the valley. I've cut windows on old blocks to see what they look like inside. And
really,
they're not pretty.
No, they're not. They're just like. Okay, here's one for you, I think.
Okay, well, that's interesting because I don't run a transcooler in the car. Going down the racetrack, Pedro, I run a direct line. The transmission doesn't have any external coolers. And when I get back from a run, I plug in an external transcooler. A friend of mine makes called Mood Motorsport.
Wow.
And it just cools the transmission down after each run.
That's amazing.
But if I'm driving drag week, and drag week, we drive between tracks. Each traveling point is probably 3 to 4 hours of driving. And I use just a B&M transmission cooler just for the traveling on the roads.
Wow. That's crazy, So it hooks up. It's probably got fittings, Jiffy fittings. You fit in.
I've got Jiffy fittings, yeah.
Yeah.
We just come back from the run. We cool the trans down. It shows us what the temperature was and what it goes down to. And, as soon as I'm down to 100 Fahrenheit, I unplug and go make another hit.
Nice. Yeah, I've tried that stuff. Put a little fan on the tranny cooler, so you can turn it on when you're on a run. I don't think it does much. I don't know. He said, thank you. Appreciate that. Miss Kate, I can't remember. Andrew, I think you go by. You're a Mopar man, but thanks for being here.
Yes, thank you.
I appreciate it. Here's another one of the people get caught on this and like to hear about cylinder wall thickness. From Ford said the non-cylinder wall thickness from 69 from all Cleveland engine plants was 189 thousandths down to 242. So that's interesting fact. So right now we've been going for almost 2 hours, which is nice. And I don't want to, what's the word? I don't want to cut people off, but I want to kind of plan on going because I know my wife's saying, Tim, what are you doing out there? Hi. And
my wife's at work, so she won't be asking any questions.
You're at work. See, you're at work. But we'll definitely talk again because this is amazing to be able to ask these questions and help these people here that are watching that are into this like us.
Yeah.
I appreciate it, Frank. Like I said, you're really the first guy that's really taught Cleveland's down to a science of putting them together and building them. And that's what the majority of guys want that are going to race Cleveland's. They want something that's in the 600 horsepower. They're not building like me trying to get 750 or more. So please organize.
Another thing we haven't touched base on is who believes in the 4-bolt version and not. And it used to be a big deal when I was growing up. And then, one of the first engines I raced, I couldn't afford to put 4-bolt steel caps on or try and find the original 4-bolt caps.
Yeah.
Some blocks came out of the factory with it. And it's amazing. Like all this time I grew up thinking you had to have 4 bolts if you were going to make 600
No
And
way.
then the ARP stud came out and we ran with it and never turned back from it, you know. So for those guys who are thinking that, you know, you must do that.
Nope.
No.
752 2-bolt main.
Exactly. 700 horse. I've got a YouTube video on a 700 horsepower Cleveland, and it's just a 2-bolt.
Now, here's a quick question. I run a girdle. I've been running ones for 20 years because that's what when I was building my first stroker, I read about it and thought about it, and it sounded good to me, and I ran one ever since. Does it matter to you having a bottom end girdle?
I'm going to say, you know, no, I don't think you need one.
Okay.
You know,
you don't think it helps cap walk or anything like that?
Well, I'm not a metallurgist, so I can't tell you. Depends on what girdle you're using, what material it is,
right?
How does the material grow against the cast iron cap? Okay, let's look at one of these Hemis.
Yeah.
I know they have side bolts like a LS.
Yep. Cross bolt. Yep.
But they don't have a girdle. You know, like my Windsor doesn't have a girdle. It makes 2,800 at the back wheels horsepower.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a girdle. If the caps are walking, I believe the caps are walking because A, they obviously weren't machined correctly, or B, the engine is unhappy at somewhere. It might not even be detonation, Tim.
Okay.
It might be a balance. It might be a balance. It might be a bad harmonic balancer. It could have been a bad converter balance. Who knows?
Right.
There's too many areas to touch base on what makes a cap walk. But I can tell you, I've raced Clevelands long enough that when I've had everything in harmony, the caps don't walk with the 2-bolt stud. And no girdle at all.
Okay. I doweled mine. I read something, and my buddy Steve Kenzel said, try doweling them. So I doweled them a little bit.
It doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. That's just, you know, that's like putting grout in a block. It's going to help.
John, thank you. We appreciate it. Here's a question. How involved is it getting a car back and forth to America? What is the preparation and time it takes?
Well, John, I haven't done it. I definitely haven't done it yet. But I would love to get my Falcon over to the US and do drag week at some point.
Yeah.
If COVID doesn't screw me up, I want to be there for next year if I could. My problem is I don't want to miss out on drag week here because it's probably 4 weeks after or 5 weeks after. So we're in the middle. We're in the middle of looking into it at the moment. I think I can ship the car there, no problems. And I'm trying to work out if I can fly the car back. So we've got a few guys on board that want to help out because I think it's like $30K to fly the car back.
Here's what someone said. Not too hard. The biggest issue is exporting from US is more. I've exported a mini club van and a Mark II Jag, 2,500 each in a 20-footer. That must be a shipping container then.
Yeah, that is a shipping container, 20-footer.
Yeah.
And we recently brought a car over, and it was double that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, if you just get that car over here, Frank, I only live 20 minutes from Norwalk Summit Raceway, one of the best tracks in the country. So
let me tell you, if I bring that car over, you're riding shotgun with me.
I'll be there, man. We'll do it. Let's do it.
That'd be
Be awesome. Our ports are backlogged. Okay. Our ports are backlogged. It probably is. The way everything's going, everything's basically a standstill with parts and getting things.
Everything, yeah. Yeah.
So listen, let's shut down now. That way we can talk a couple minutes after. And then I tell you guys, I appreciate you coming here and listening to Frank and I talk. We didn't just talk about racing. We talked about cars, Cleveland's, life, everything, you know, and I appreciate, Frank, you taking the time from your busy day to spend with Tim.
No, it was my
Here in
pleasure.
my little shed, you know.
It was my pleasure, Tim.
In America. So I really do appreciate it. So thank you for that. What we'll do, just so everyone can hear, we'll talk after this. we'll plan another one somewhere in the near future.
Yeah.
I got a bunch of people I'm trying to schedule because this is interesting for people. So you guys stay tuned, and we're going to call it a day.